The Red Review is brought to you by Growth Ignition, the transformation consulting, training and enabling tech firm in the work-winning space, and their product set, the Bid Toolkit, the online bid processing guide with APMP accredited training and tools to download. Hello and welcome to the Red Review with me, Jeremy Brim. Another great episode this time, welcoming my friend Jack back to the podcast. So hello, Jack.
Good morning, Jeremy. Lovely to see you as always.
Thank you. So this is one of those we'll have a boys chuckle in that this is one of those funny episodes where I'm talking to one of my best friends. So and we've got a specific reason. I think it will be valuable for listeners anyway. But unashamedly, we've got something to promote too. But some of you will remember Jack had been on previous episodes, either as a panelist, and he was a panelist on one of our live events before the pandemic and things, all round good egg. But for those, because we've picked up some new listeners as the thing grows. Mr. Jack Strickland, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a bit of an intro to you and a career overview, and then we'll get into what you're up to these days.
Lovely. Well, thank you. Yes, so Jeremy and I know each other from having worked together. Jeremy was ostensibly my boss, but I was more like his carer. So that's how I've ended up being here. So yeah. So yes,
Thank you,
the reason we ended up you're most welcome. The reason we ended up together is that I was born into a family of builders. So my granddad built many of the houses in the area I grew up in. My dad was a bricklayer who worked his way up through the industry, retired on one of the boards of the business units at Skanska. So I inevitably ended up in construction myself, took a job as a labourer the day after my lease ran out at university after my English degree. Worked my way up through various roles myself, and then went on a 2-year management training course, part of which was in the bid team. And I absolutely loved it for reasons I no longer really remember, frankly. But yeah, the pace, the deadlines, it was all very exciting given the kind of work I'd been doing. The pace, deadlines, working with big teams, the variation, it was all very, very interesting and exciting, and I really liked it. So that was something I pursued. And 15 years in bids later, I've ended up here via a role for a large data center developer as global head of bids for them, which then led to a more expansive role as director of brand bids and marketing for a property development startup, which expanded my experience and the way that I saw how business functions and the way to make things successful. It really expanded my thinking on that, and hence I have ended up here where I am starting my own venture.
Very exciting. So yeah, you have, because I've been along for some of the ride and been to your fancy offices in your fancy startup and things to help with the odd bits and pieces. Thank you for the work as always, and helped you along the way a little bit. So I've seen some of the stuff you've been up to, and it was really very exciting. And our conversations over a beer for you and a fake beer for me have been quite good about this, or very interesting about this stuff. So give us an overview then of your new business, what it's called, what it's about, what you're going to be doing, why you're different, that kind of stuff.
So the business is called The Whole Nine, which is an idiom people will be familiar with. The reason it's called that is because I met a really amazing marketing manager called Polly Pearson in my last role, and we worked together with my long-suffering collaborator and friend Ollie Stockbridge. The Whole Nine is representative of all of us, really. We have a very similar outlook on things in that we believe you should give everything to a project. And giving everything to a project means achieving the right outcomes, the best outcomes. Going the whole 9 yards means giving it absolutely everything you've got fundamentally. And that's kind of how we are. We want to give everything and help people succeed. And that's where the business leads on from, really. So I have a long background in work winning and sales, and sort of bleeding into the marketing area and the creative stuff. Polly is very much a marketeer, and a very good one. Really understands how to get people what they need, how to reach the right people for businesses, to say the right things. And Ollie is an absolutely brilliant creative. He really commits himself to doing really excellent work, better, I would say, than any other creative I've worked with, and I've worked with a lot. And really, the business and the idea for this came together from us working a bit on the last of the startup scale ups, in that when businesses are forming at speed, the links between the various parts of the business start to break, and the parts of the business kind of drift apart. And that's where actually then the ability to scale, the ability to form the business when it's coming together, begins to destabilize. And that was something that particularly at the property development startup we were able to help them with. And it was something that external people said, the marketing bidding proposition was much more mature than it had any right to be after the length of time we'd been together, because we were very much pulling back the parts of the business together and giving them the ability to do things that they shouldn't really have been able to do at the stage of business we're at. And that's kind of that was our starting point. And then you and I have worked for similar organizations, particularly in construction. In big businesses, you have the same issue. You have siloed working, you have teams who don't talk to each other, even though they're doing very similar work. But the businesses themselves can't see it. They've lost sight of the basics. The people running the teams don't understand that actually there are really significant benefits that can be achieved by starting to listen to each other again and coming back together. And it's that inspired us to start the business. And that's really how we got there.
Very good. So it's really exciting, and you're right. So I must have done many maturity benchmarking workshops now with businesses ranging from medium sized to very large, well-known brands, benchmarking how mature they are through business strategy, marketing, planning and execution, and particularly CAM, capture and bidding, and then maybe the CRM client success stuff. And nobody is in the right-hand high-performing column in anything, really. In reality, a tiny fraction are at one or two things. And most organizations are frankly all over the place. They don't do what we call joining the dots through that arc. And so I'm helping clients tackle that through training and capability development and a bit of process design. You're actually really doing the looking to help them. You're going to go into those businesses and help them fix these challenges. So I take it as you're going to be supporting them understanding their sales funnel, how their marketing supports that, particularly fixing that very often broken thing of CRM system, or really it's pipeline data, and how that all works and how that's segmented and analyzed by the business, and then what you do with that, the action that you take off the back of that, all the way to actually supporting people, writing successful bids, I guess. But did I get that right from the slightly drunk conversations we'd had weeks ago?
Yes. So the data is a big thing. So I think, again, lots of businesses have some things like a communication strategy, and that means running campaigns. It means releasing content at certain times about certain things. Are they measuring where that goes, the number of people who may have actually seen it, who it reached, in fact, and whether those customers or those geographies are actually even the right places? Is this stuff even going to the people who need to hear it? It's little things like that which you can understand by the use of data, and it very quickly proves or disproves how something does or doesn't work. that's a massive thing. That's something I don't think a lot of people are doing well at all. And it's interesting because it's not that difficult to access if you apply yourself and sort of set up a few of the right platforms. The data is there for you to take away and analyze. It's very much available, but people don't do it, and it's very interesting actually, because you fall into this trap of going through the motions of these stages of, oh well, we need a content plan, we need to set up a tech stack. Okay, well we've put a CRM in place, that's fine, then nobody uses it. It's where it's, have you done this, you tick the box, but have you actually thought about what the impact of that is, or what the possible benefits to the business are? Because it's not just, setting up a CRM and having it sitting there with no one feeding data into it means you might as well not have done it in the first place. As a for instance, it's the difference between having something done and having something done well, I suppose, is how you could put it.
Yeah, agreed. And that's a huge gaping chasm of a market opportunity, I think, for you. And then the clever stuff that all connects around that some, the classic thing like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, usually in businesses, one person has shoved a subscription for that through their expenses, and it's either not really switched on, or they're not using it, or don't understand how to use it. But it's not being used as the sophisticated insight tool that it should be to plan accounts or prospects, and how to enter those accounts and all of that kind of stuff. It's rarely used well, and as part of a wider ecosystem. As just one example, there's how you use your CRM platform, like you say. There's how you use the analytics out the back of your website and social media and the customer journey through all of that stuff. No one's doing that really, or effectively. There's marketing people screaming out, wishing that their business would understand why it's important, and perhaps they do classically need an external voice to come and tell them why and show them the benefit.
Well, you mentioned why we're different before. I suppose that's one of the ways we want to try and position ourselves with businesses, in that economically times are hard for everybody in various different ways, but everybody's suffering in their own ways. Business wise, that means very often, obviously, the creative slash support function style teams get stripped to the bone. So bid teams, marketing teams, creatives most definitely are the first to go in times of necessary redundancy and so on. And particularly with businesses that are startups, scale ups, they have a finite amount of money to spend. Can I employ a marketeer full time? Almost certainly not. That's not how it works, and with the benefits packages and so on. And the thing we want to try and do is create transparency, and that's really important to me. I think it's around the work, because I think we've discussed this in the past. Everyone wants to believe that what they're doing is like splitting the atom, right? So right, I work in bids, and I want to make it so mysterious and make you feel like it's something really complicated and clever, when realistically it isn't. It's a process driven exercise that has a set of requirements at the start and spits out products at the end. If you follow the basics, you'll get there. And it's the same for marketing, it's the same for design, and so on and so forth. There are central tenets that make it work, and that's what we want to show people and say, look, this is why this is important, but not with jargon and not with fancy terminology that people don't understand, so that they feel silly, by actually explaining it to them. And by the same token, I think doing that with how you set out your payment terms, how you use your time, what you're going to do for somebody. Well, look, you've got X amount of money to spend, for instance, in a scale up business. I can squeeze this much work out of it as a package of works, and that's what we'll do for you in a given time frame. Which I don't think is something that a lot of, because I've seen how a lot of people, particularly in our area of work, operate, and they do want to make things confusing. They do want you to not understand how much is going into something, and I have never appreciated that. I would rather someone feel like they understand what I'm going to do for them, and that they're getting some value for their money. That's something I don't think a lot of people offer or achieve, in my opinion. So yeah, I think that's really important.
No, I think you're right. And so off camera a minute ago, we touched on uh, a concept of sales funnels, which you built for your previous startup scale up, and before that. So, and I'm living through at the moment, I'm doing a new SEO and website project with one agency, and there'll be an episode of the podcast on that towards the end of October. But I'm also working with a separate uh, sales funnel, very Americanized flavor of sales funnel, very B2C sales funnel agency on two funnels: the destination freedom thing that I'm doing, the financial freedom program. But then we are also building now, having learned what I've learned on that with them, I'm applying that thinking to growth ignition, the core business, to launch, to sell more of the stuff we already do, bid training, etc., but also to launch like a leadership development program in growing a business for owners of SMEs, leadership teams of business units of bigger businesses, etc. And so I learned a lot about that sales funnel stuff. And to be honest with you, I wish I realised that's what you were getting at, because I could have got you to come and do this stuff, although I'm a bit further down the road, I guess. But we should talk about this stuff. But almost nobody in the businesses that we've worked for before, or the kinds of people that we work with, certainly in the UK and Europe, really understand that stuff. And in the States, it's absolutely mega. Um, and there are people providing services that are of a similar flavour to mine, not work winning stuff, more like helping business owners manifest and all that kind of thing. But running basically the same funnel, that are running hugely successful businesses through a funnel of kind of Facebook ads, a free challenge, and then that brings you to a premium course or something. That kind of model is perfectly applicable to normal businesses, I think. And this is a new front for me, a really interesting area. And I think you could really break that into UK business, I think.
Well, there's what, yeah. There's another side to the sales funnel concept, which is the identification and then the implementation of dependencies as you pass down. So from where you're talking about a more, let's call it mass marketing, because you're sending messages out to many people who and trying to see how many of them will hear it. Obviously, as you pass down, the dependency becomes on different people, but that's the interesting part for me about where the communication breaks down and people are not offering things back and forth in terms of passing down through that funnel, the messaging changing, the nature of the behavior changing, the requirements in terms of moving down through the funnel, because it becomes, the nature of a funnel is it's becoming more compact. So there is more of a challenge to pass down through to the bottom. It becomes more difficult. And that's the thing. These teams and businesses should be passing on and assisting each other in trying to pass down through that funnel, but it almost never happens. Well, I've done my bit up here, so now you go off and do your bit over there, and I'll just wander off and look at something else. That's what you find is the most common thing, and that isn't how it should work. There should be a codependency thing, actually, is the thing. It's interesting. It's interesting to see it in operation and then try and explain this to somebody, because it's very rare that they've ever thought about it that way, or tried to apply their work to it, in fact, in terms of, well, if I, as the sales team member, was actually going and sitting down with someone from the marketing team once a week and saying, right, how did that campaign operate? Did that succeed? Were people listening? Who were they? Where were they? And so on and so forth. That salesperson is empowered to go away and succeed in their role. How many salespeople do that? Almost none. That's absolutely the truth.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And funny enough, you liked a picture that I'd put on LinkedIn yesterday. My wife Jules was giving a talk yesterday to the Export Academy part of the Department for Business and Trade in the UK. So she had 100 odd small business owners, leadership people from, sales people from businesses that export abroad. And her talk was on like the 101 of marketing for non-marketeers who were looking to sell work abroad or sell products abroad. And it's really an exceptional talk. Obviously we don't actually work together often at all, and I don't get to see her stuff really. And I sort of sat there right next to her, just off camera, in awe of the stuff she was talking about. But I did think of you because there was a key slide on sales funnel and the marketing aspect of how you create awareness and then how you engage them further. And then in your world, so in the B2C world that my other funnel stuff's going through, it's about how you bring them in through a free challenge or whatever. In your world where you're coaching your clients, I guess it's about salespeople or seller doers picking up those leads, nurturing those leads, handing them across effectively to delivery people, and how you enable that with data and reporting and all of that kind of stuff. And you're absolutely right. That's just, I don't think I've come across a business that does that well in all of the work I've done. So I think it's a really fascinating area, Jack. I think you're onto something.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, I believe we are. I think, we're in my talks with Polly over quite a long time. It's something that people struggle with, and yeah, look, I was telling you before we came on, we designed a bespoke version of this that was tailored for the last business we're in, and it, to a degree, it blew their minds. It just wasn't. It was just too hard to understand, and inevitably at the start, you have people picking up on specific words in terms of the notes you've put on it and various things, and just not understanding the actual concept of, okay, we feed many leads in at the top of the hopper, and then the things that come out are very few. It's hard to get there. There are many things you'll have to do in order to force the ones that are successful down and out of the bottom. Yeah, it's actually very interesting conceptually, but is something I'm really, really enthusiastic about working on. It's it's fascinating.
Yeah, so if you can simplify, create graphics that explain that simply for, business people, stakeholders, seller doers, etc., salespeople, and get them engaged around it and codify it, and quite importantly for you. So I've just recorded yesterday an episode with Kirsty Collin from Gleeds, who's their head of CRM, customer voice, all that kind of stuff. Wonderful lady that we both worked with at Mace as well, actually, and doing some fantastic work at Gleeds. And that whole, everyone thinks CRM is a technology platform, and it's not. It's customer relationship management. It's how you look after your customers, and their customer voice. The same is true in your world, that senior people think, oh, I'll buy a CRM platform and that's that solved. And of course it's really, really not, and that should be the last thing they do, or towards the end. That's just an enabler for the process and the funnel that you create and the roles and responsibilities around that, and all that good stuff.
It's a dumb conduit, really. The thing itself will never solve your problems or do it. It won't do anything for you. Obviously, the various platforms have forms of automation, and you can instruct processes within them and so on and so forth, and they spit certain things out and reminders, actions, and various bits and pieces. But you and I have spoken about this many times. Realistically, if you put bad information into a CRM or no information at all, it just sits there. It's a dumb way. It doesn't do anything. And that's not what it's for. It's designed to be a receptacle for all this hard work that you do. And this again, I think it's a perception thing. It's an understanding thing. You try and explain this sometimes to someone who's sales focused, and it's very difficult for them. Well, I don't like putting things into a CRM. Well, then you might as well not have one. That's how you're going to work, because you have to do it. You either do it or the whole thing is a waste of time.
Well, and better, but in some ways worse. There are a lot of bigger businesses, PLCs in particular, that need to demonstrate to their owners that they have a pipeline, and their leadership want to know that they've got a pipeline. So they have, many of the big contractors have Microsoft Dynamics, for instance. Some of them have Salesforce, but fundamentally they're not using it as a CRM platform. They're using it as a pipeline repository, which they could have used just a big spreadsheet for. And they do some governance stuff, which is quite sensible. So if you put an opportunity on that is over a certain value, or perhaps higher risk, like a big refurbishment or something, an email goes off to somebody senior for them to approve that can stay on the pipeline, and those kinds of things that are quite sensible. but then, and the more sensible ones, some of my clients will have a bi-weekly or monthly at least pipeline meeting. So you used to make jokes about me sitting in meeting rooms at Mace, day after day. Quite often what we were doing was sitting through rounds of pipeline meetings each month, to talk about our opportunities and what we were going to do about them. And of course, commercial directors and MDs would turn up to those about because they hadn't done anything, or lie to us, or focus on the wrong things because they didn't have an appropriate funnel. We were just talking about their top 5 opportunities, and classically they would be the stuff that was going to be out in a month's time to bid, when actually in my world your work is going to be very important for the kind of development of capture, I think, for B2B, B2G businesses, particularly B2G businesses, because we want to know and analyze what those key opportunities are that are 18 months away, that are a year away at least. And so I've got a client at the moment who has Dynamics. Their salesperson puts all their leads into Dynamics, and the classic classification they have is lead, definite lead, bid, in effect, rough and tough. But you can't put anything in as a definite lead that's more than 6 months away. So their board can't see opportunity. They only look at definite leads. So their board don't look at anything that's more than 6 months away. So they don't do capture. They can't do capture in the data that they have and how their business runs itself, which is mad, absolutely mad. So your work in how to shape that for those different types of businesses is going to be really quite important, I think, and how they can use tools like Nat Sales Navigator and things in the mix.
Well, very much so, very, very much so. And that tying all that stuff in, the proper use of technology is the way to lead you into capture, because you and I have spoken about this. It's a daunting prospect because what you're talking about is the unknown. So the normal way this happens is that a person talks to a person, they find something out, and then you start pursuing it like your hair's on fire, or your beard in my case. And that's how you do it, because you found out a tidbit of information, and off you go. That's not how it works if you're looking into the future. It takes gathering of information and data and using the platforms properly to tell you the things you need to know. That's actually, almost no one's doing that. And then from the other side, I think what you were talking about before in terms of your never-ending pipeline meetings, when you go marching off with your little speak and spell under your arm and then come back 3 days later. People are not asking the right questions, are they? Right, why has this been in the top 5 for 3 months when no one's found any new information out about it? It's dead. It's a dead lead, but you're still talking about it because it's got 250 million sat behind it. You see the pound signs, but you're not asking the questions. You're not saying, why are we even talking about something that literally nobody in the business has spoken to anyone else about for 3 months, 6 months? There's nothing to say about it. Let's take it off and look at something further away that is a viable proposition. That's how this should be. That should be the natural progression of things. But it's a difficult thing to avoid, and it's not surprising. People fall into habit and routine and stop asking themselves whether they're doing the right things, which is where then engaging somebody who actually looks at this and goes, well, when was the last time anyone in this business spoke to X customer about this contract? Oh, I don't know. The person who got the lead in has left the business, and actually, it's just been sat on the pipeline for however long. And it's common. It's extremely common.
Yeah, no, it is very common. So how are you gonna fix that? So I guess you can do a review for a client, like a benchmarking thing, understand where they are, give them some coaching on and next steps in how to fix things. They can bring you in to fix certain things, they can bring others in or fix things themselves, that kind of thing. But that's the starting point that I find often is a bit of a maturity benchmarking thing to help them understand where they are and create a plan of what to do next, I guess, right?
Yeah, so this is the other tie into the name. So we've created 9 areas across the sales cycle. So the 9 areas of the whole 9. It's very clever.
Oh, very good, very good.
Yeah, there you go. You see, but yes, the starting point is you go in effectively. You're conducting an audit, is what Polly and I have been describing it as, and we're mapping this out both graphically and in components in words. And the audit will show what we're kind of describing as hotspots across the business. So if you've got a sales continuum and you're identifying the weak links in that continuum, saying, okay, if you wanted to think about certain things, you've identified, you think you've got a problem with X with your bidding. Actually, the problem that is being caused in your bid team, which you are identifying, is starting back here in the gathering of information and the way you speak to your customers. And that is related to your marketing team and your sales team. This is a bit that also is not performing properly, and that is what's causing you pain later on. Those are the things we want to work out and say, look, these are the pieces of work you could do. If you want to treat the whole thing, these are the pieces of work you could do. This will have this outcome, and that will lead to that for the bid team, and then you can follow this on. That's kind of the way we want to work it. Is and again, by being transparent, by saying, look, you think you have this much work to do, we think you've got that much work to do, these are the relative values of that, the number of days, and so on and so forth, and trying to be transparent about how you'd go about fixing those problems and working with someone. I think Polly likes to describe it as working as an extension of somebody's team, not somebody who's external doing things to people, because that's very often how consultants work. Everyone feels like they're having things inflicted on them. It's very much that Polly, Ollie, and I, we function as people who like to work with people. And that means, yeah, as I say, acting as an extension. Look, I can see this is a problem for you. I have experience in doing this. Let's work it out together. I'll work this through with you, and we'll try and get to the point where that's fixed. That's very much how we're looking to work. It's I think I suppose you could say we're trying to buck some of the trends. I mean, a consultant or contractor or whatever, it's sort of become a dirty word, I think, over many years, because you bring someone in because you've got an issue, they partially fix it, kind of shrug their shoulders and wander off. And that's very much we don't want to do that. We want to be accountable for the things we say we'll do and offer people assistance and see it through to the end. That's very much how we all feel we want to do things.
It's fascinating, and it's really good timing. So, I've got this rebrand. We're Growth Ignition's 5 years old and a month. As part of the sort of birthday, there was the realization we should rebrand, think about what we stand for. So we are both, you're going through a new brand exercise and a business launch. So it's fascinating to talk to you. You're literally in the throes of it. Your website's not even up yet. So it's fascinating for many of our listeners to talk to you at this point, or hear you talk at this point, because not many people get to be involved in that kind of thing, and it is really exciting, and it's lovely to be part of that and then see it succeed. I'm at the next step, I guess, 5 years down the line, of a rebrand and refresh of what the business stands for. There's been a real realization for me, which has been a bit tough for the old ego, I guess, that in my world of more capability development rather than fixing things for people, 800 people a month Google bid writing training, as a for instance. In the UK, only 50 people a month even Google capture management, let alone capture management training or anything. So you can just tell the level of maturity.
We also both know that's something you do want to do versus something you don't want to do, let's face it. So,
exactly. So so the realization has sunk in that I need to carry on doing the bid writing training stuff, but that's the entry point to a broader conversation. Try and talk the client into a proper maturity piece, understand where their real issues are, because of course they're not losing bids really because they can't write bids. They're losing bids because they were never positioned for them. They're bidding sporadically to prospects rather than looking after their current clients and landing and expanding effectively with CAM, or their they don't have market research. They're not fishing in the right ponds for the right things, and all of that kind of stuff that you want to help them fix. So, but in amongst that rebrand, we're relaunching the business really. We've launched a new sales skills course that sits sort of below or alongside the full-blown key account management program we already do. which is largely about for salespeople, seller doers, anyone that needs to be involved in working with clients to win work. It's a program for them, but there's the realization is sinking in. I think I need to add a couple of slides on sales funnels and how this stuff works, because I've focused more on the human relationship aspect, account planning, lo-fi account planning stuff, journey to trusted advisor, that kind of thing. But actually, I've learned a lot and should put some more stuff in there about sales funnel and their part in it, actually. So I might well pick your brains on that, mate. That's probably not a bad place to be.
You feel free. Well, the interesting thing about what you're saying there is, I suppose you and I naturally look at different parts of the whole cycle, just because it's where our brains go, I guess. Is it where you're talking about key account management and influencing further up the chain and so on and so forth? I think about how the average bid person, regardless of seniority, operates within a business, and they will treat that as a task to get to the end of. How many times, for instance, and yes, Louise, I was talking to about this the other day, actually, which is interesting because it's something
our mutual friend
Louise O'Reilly. Yes, Louise O'Reilly. Because I used to batter her over the head with it constantly. But the first thing you ask is, where did this come from, and who found it? Why do we think it's viable? What's the go no go score? Why would they pick us? Let's disregard price and speed, because everybody knows that that's what everybody's focusing on. Why else would they? What are their problems? What are they trying to fix? All of this stuff that should get asked doesn't get asked, and those are other links in the chain. If you've done your key account management bit up the front properly, you'll have the answers to all those questions. But very often you start asking these questions and it's just, dig that old bid out we did for X, and then we'll just replicate 80% of that and stick a new executive summary on the front of it. That's what you get. It's disastrous.
No, it's absolutely disastrous. You're right. So no, what I'm finding, and it's touched on in a few episodes and different things we're doing, but almost nobody's doing capture. So everybody's bidding bids that are almost cold to them. They might have done some pre-bid prep and maybe a pre-mortem on why they might lose it, but their ability to change those issues or influence the client is basically zip. Whereas my smarter clients, which is only a small number of at the moment, are influencing these things 18 months out, with their marketing functions. Beautiful work. But it does seem to be the extremes. There's no one really operating in the middle. But the key account management bit and its intersection with sales funnel actually is going to be, maybe it's another episode. We should do another episode with you in 6 months time or 9 months time to see how you're getting on anyway. But we should talk about that intersection of CAM and sales funnel, because basically no one is running effective key account management programs. And if they are, it's fairly lo-fi. It's on the wrong clients. They're looking after their clients who have the biggest turnover with them today, not the ones that are their growth clients for the future. They're looking after clients that are actually scaling down with them because their programs are coming to an end, or if they're doing it at all, but most aren't. And that's how I end up with clients phoning me up. Jezza, will you help us with this capture campaign? And my heart sinks, because, and it's always the case, that they don't mean capture. They mean that the bid's out in 3 months time. That's not capture. And actually they've got a key account plan, but no one's taken it out the drawer in 2 years. Their key account manager left a year ago. The client's side has all changed. People have retired or whatnot. There's new people come in. They've not kept pace with it. And suddenly they're getting hit with a cold rebid for a contract they've had for 20 years. It's just unacceptable. It's just not clever at all. Their staff deserve better, if anything else. So there's so much opportunity to fix that stuff. And to be honest with you, if they get that right, the game of the bid function completely changes to helping the business write proactive proposals as part of capture, and then full-blown priced proposals to negotiate with the client. So there's never a competition at all. And that transforms if you can get more and more of that, it's utopia. But if you can go from having zip to 5% or 10% of your deals like that, your cost of sale and your margin, your cost of the sale drops dramatically. Your margin of the business goes sky high because you've moved from being a commodity service provider to a client to a trusted partner that's shaping valuable propositions for them, and you're taking a share of that value, which happens to be bigger than what you would have got paid if you just bid it competitively. But everyone's happy because everyone's winning. So moving towards that valuable proposition piece, super important. But anyway, we'll get to that another time. We've rattled on, mate. We've kind of answered the questions I think we were going to talk about. So congratulations on forming your new super group. I think it's extremely exciting, and it's going to be fascinating what you find once you get in amongst it with more and more clients. I know you've got bits and pieces going, but where can people find you at the moment to be able to get in touch about sales funnels and beyond?
So at the moment, that's interesting. Yeah. So we only have a holding page for the website, but that's thewhole9.co.uk. So I am Jack at thewhole9.co.uk. We're just in the process of getting some little bits and pieces of branding done in order to properly launch LinkedIn pages and all that kind of thing. So those will be going up. So just a bit of a search on LinkedIn will get you to where you go as well.
In the meantime, they could just search for you, Jack Strickland. And have you got the whole 9 on at the moment on your LinkedIn profile as a new thing? Not yet. But I don't think they're. You will have. You will have by the time this goes out.
By the time this appears, yes.
No, fair enough. But if not, there aren't that many Jack Stricklands anyway. And so,
thankfully for everybody, yeah.
That's right. So yeah, absolutely. Definitely couldn't deal with more than one of you. So great to have you on, mate. I'm really pleased for you. We'll support you till the cows come home, as you know, and looking forward to helping where I can and seeing it blossom, because it's very much a needed area. And you know, it's going to be fascinating. And of course, people can always phone you up to come and help them with their bids and all that sort of stuff, because that's all part of it. But the sophisticated stuff, the interesting stuff, is where you'll add real value, lower cost of sale, higher conversion, all of that good stuff that will make quite a big difference to the bottom line. So excellent. Thanks very much, mate.
Well, and thank you very much for having me.
No worries. Thank you.